Hi everybody, welcome to this webinar on AI prompt building. I'm just going to wait for a few more minutes just for the rest of people to join in. So feel free to have a look at this wonderful slide that I have here as we just wait a few more minutes for people to start. So while we are waiting for a few more people to log on, as I mentioned, this is about AI prompt building with Microsoft Copilot. The idea of it is to get better results, really. When often we look at prompts and we kind of we look at them as something which is almost throwaway. It's like, well, I need it to get an end result, right? I need to get to the point of what it was that I'm trying to say. And often we don't really put thought into the construction of those prompts. However, with engineering, with good prompt engineering, what we can do is we can write prompts in a certain way, which can really, give us a better result faster than if we were just to kind of write it in the most basic sense. So it's designed to be for all experience levels. Those of you who have been on the talk that I gave at the Leicestershire Innovation Festival, you'll recognize a few of these slides, not all of them, but you'll recognize a few of them because I'm reusing it, hence the reason why I've still got the logo there for the Innovation Festival. So yeah, bear with me through those slides. Those of you who have seen them, we will be getting to the prompt building kind of in the middle of the webinar. Just a quick bit about myself. For those of you who don't know, I'm Tim Grayson. I am the Principal Technical Account Manager at Better IT. It's my role to make sure that our clients and other people out there are understanding the different technologies and in really kind of basic senses. So basically, most of the things that I will be doing are pretty much suitable for all experience levels. So whatever it is, whether you're a Copilot kind of power user or whether you're someone who's just quite new to it, you'll find a place here for you. So I hope you find something useful out of it. So why does prompt engineering matter? I've already kind of mentioned this slightly, but lots of the times when people are looking at writing prompts, they'll put things in and they almost treat Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, as if, or it could be anything. It could be, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Claude, whatever AI tool you're using, and they treat it like it's a mind reader. They treat it like it's something that should be able to infer what it is that you want. And the thing is, with AI tools, they do have that built in them, so they can infer what it is that you're looking for. But because it's not a mind reader, it won't really understand the intention or the context or really what you're trying to get out of it. So the whole idea of prompt engineering is to kind of try and put things into a structured approach so you can then go, okay, what is it that I'm trying to get out of this? And give it the context and the sources and everything that you kind of need to be able to build it up so it will come back with something which will be a lot more aligned with what it is that you're looking for in the first place. And that's really the thing. That's why prompt engineering matters, because your prompt really does give Copilot the context that it's needed. Without any context, without anything like that, it literally is acting like a mind reader, right? So we don't want it to act like that. Otherwise, it will just take loads and loads of time as we keep redoing our prompts. So the idea of doing this correctly the first time is that it will make things a lot simpler later on. So these are the topics that we're going to do. The first one is about which version of Copilot that you're using currently. We need to identify first of all which version of Copilot we're using to understand how we can best use that version of Copilot. Secondly, we're going to talk about how you can help Copilot to understand your business. That's something which can be used as a business owner, but also it can be used by individuals, within the business. All of us can really help Copilot to understand that better. Then we're going to go into prompt engineering, as mentioned, which is the GCSE method. We'll go into that. And then also we're going to cover what if we're tired of writing the same prompts for repeat tasks, because the prompt engineering, it can be quite a lengthy process. So kind of how can we make it easier so we don't have to keep doing that same process again and again. And then finally, we're going to finish with some key takeaways. Okay, so which version of Copilot are we using at present? This is a key question that we need to answer. So, as you can see here, first of all, we need to identify which version of Copilot that we're using. So, you'll see this on the screen in front of you. This talks about the different versions of Copilot. In the bottom right, you'll see different versions of it. You'll see personal and you'll see work and education. If you're using Copilot on your personal laptop, that's nothing to do with work, this will be the version of Copilot that you will see. It's very similar to ChatGPT, this one. There's not really any difference. Anything that you put into that, it goes off to the wider model. It's not very secure. It's pretty much just a version of, like, a free version of ChatGPT. That's on a personal laptop. However, most of us that are listening to this will probably be listening to it on a work laptop, which is this part here, which says under work and education in the bottom right, it says Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, Microsoft 365 Copilot, right? So Copilot Chat is the standard one that comes with Microsoft 365. That comes with what it is that you're already using with Windows. This one is grounded in web data only. So if you're wanting it to understand your business, it's going to be very limited. The good thing about this is that it is secure in terms of the fact that it doesn't go, it doesn't put whatever you're putting into it into the wider model like the personal one does. So whatever you're feeding into this, it stays within your work environment. However, when it's coming to try and find information for you, it's limited to just the web, right? And then that's kind of what Copilot Chat is. Lots of people, if you're not paying for a Copilot license, that is the version that you will have. So you'll have loads of the security elements of Copilot within a work environment. So you don't have to worry, like with ChatGPT and other AI models, of when you put something in, it's suddenly being, it feeding back to the wider model and your secure company data going elsewhere. Don't need to worry about that because it stays within your work environment. But at the same time, in terms of like actually helping you with your work environment, it's only very limited to what it can find online. This is why people would pay for a Copilot license, which is the very, very bottom right corner. It says Microsoft 365 Copilot, and you'll see it says grounded in the web and work data. So you can really start to tailor that to your business, so Copilot can really start to understand your business. You can see a bit more about like the kind of wider part of the differences between Copilot Chat and Copilot in this massive box here. That just talks about really the main differences. You'll notice there's a few different elements. Some of them are about the personal assistant side, where you actually have Copilot within the apps that you're, the programs that you're using, and there's other elements as well. But yeah, this is kind of the main difference. So the first thing we need to identify is which version of Copilot that we're using before we even get into prompt engineering, because it will change depending on that. Now, how can we help Copilot to understand our business? This is again a familiar slide for those of you who were at the talk. The thing is, what we need to do is we need to start with curating a searchable library, right? So Simon Crownshaw, he is the Worldwide Media and Entertainment Director at Microsoft, and he says that film studios treat their archives like gold mines. I would say that most other industries treat theirs like storage closets. If you went and asked any company what they've done with older documents, emails, and presentations, or where those live, I bet they won't know. There's a lot of intelligence there waiting to be used. Maybe what's old is new again. And the reason why I read this out verbatim is because it's a really important point. There are so many businesses out there. Obviously, he's used to working within specifically the media and entertainment space. But if we do look into other spaces, there is so much wealth, within the data that we already have, whether that's in sales collateral, marketing collateral, brand guidelines, catalogs of what it is that we have, all this kind of stuff. And by putting it into the right places within our Microsoft environment, we can actually get Copilot to draw from those. And this is when it starts. Again, this is when we talk about prompt engineering. that's part of prompt engineering is specifying a source. So if we have a source that isn't just the internet, that is actually something that's secure, which is within our company, then it means we can use that as a library to essentially find the parts that we need. So then we can make sure that the end result of our prompt is something which is more useful for us. So in the bottom right corner, you can see that there's the SharePoint logo and then there's the OneDrive logo. The reason why I've included both of those is because it's both up to our companies and up to us as individuals to make sure that we have something which is applicable and searchable. So if it's within SharePoint, that's something which the entire company can see and access. And if it's within our own personal OneDrive, we obviously have the responsibility to make sure that that's being maintained as well. So then anything that we want to have access to that doesn't necessarily need to be accessed by the wider company can be put on there so we can access it when we need it. Okay, so now we're going to get to the part of the whole purpose of this presentation and this webinar, which is about prompt engineering. So this is the GCSE method, and this is really how to get better results from our prompts the first time. It was also getting ahead of me as well, so I'll skip forward now. Okay, so the first thing we need to do when it comes to anything to do with prompt engineering is start with a goal. So this is the G in the GCSE method, right? So as you can see in my example here, I've just been very basic with this one, and I've just put down draft a marketing proposal. Okay, now we put this into Copilot. What can happen is if we're using if we're paying and we're using the actual the Copilot license, not just Copilot Chat, then what Copilot can do is it can then look within our work environment and try and give that context. Even though we're just being very basic and saying draft a marketing proposal, it will try and be that mind reader, which I kind of mentioned earlier, and it will really try to make sure that what it is giving you is going to be relevant, right? It's going to be something which is, it's going to be appropriate for what it is that you need. So it's going to come back, and as you can see with here, it comes back. That's the draft marketing proposal. It comes back, and it's just a one-page document, right? So it's done as best as it could. It's just created something which is as good as it can get. However, if we then add context to that, so we've started with our goal of what it is that we want, but then we add context. That's when it starts to actually get and become a good prompt. Now this is what most people do. Most people, when they're doing any kind of prompts, will start with a goal and add context, and often they'll end there. So for example, here you can see that in the middle you'll see that the actual prompt now is draft a marketing proposal for our latest product, XYZ, generate 3 campaign ideas. And you can see in the middle at the bottom, you'll see it says XYZ campaign ideas, 3 pages, idea 1, 2, 3, right? And the usefulness level of this goes up. Yeah, so the first one wasn't very useful. It wasn't really what we needed, but this one is getting a little bit better now. So we're actually starting to build up something that we're really looking for. So this is the C element of the GCSE method, right? So we've got G, which is goal. C is adding the context. Now what we need to do is we need to specify the source, okay? So when we specify the source, again, we'll keep the other bits before, but now we then say where it needs to look, right? So as you can see from the prompt, it's building on the one before, and now it says using the product specifications and requirements found in, and then the way that Copilot does it is you do a / and then you type out your source. And the reason why I talked before about the idea of making sure we have that knowledge library that we can build on within, that we can draw from, within SharePoint and our OneDrive, is that it just means that once we have that available, we're able to then be very specific about where the information is that it needs to draw from. So it's not going to just try and infer it. It's not going to try and work out where it is that we need that information from. It's not going to randomly go to some internet page and try and find it that way. It's also not going to go through to other documents that may be older or whatever. It's going to be finding the around the kind of the area that we want it to be, and it's going to be drawing from that source. Okay, and as you can see here as an example, it will say XYZ grounded proposal, again 3 pages, and it says there it cites real product specifications, not guesses. And that's one of the things about AI as well, is that anyone will probably use AI tools at some point in the past. The thing with AI tools is that sometimes it will imagine things, or it will find something from a completely random source that we don't want. So that's why we need to have that human element, just to make sure that we are checking what it is that we do before we we go and send them to clients or what have you. But the idea is that here, by putting the source down in it, as well as the goal and the context, we've then it just minimizes that chance of the of the guesswork, or of it finding sources that actually may not be as accurate as we want it to be. And then finally, we need to set clear expectations. So with this, again, we are building on what all of this is building, right? So even though we call it prompt engineering, prompt building, prompt writing, I like the context of building, because you build on each of the stages that we've already done. You don't just kind of do one of these bits, you build on it. And as you can see with this one, I've put down, include a brief overview with pros and cons for each idea, keep to 2 pages, use optimistic, convincing language, right? So what happens once you do that and you put that at the end and you build all of that to the end of this prompt, and remember, we do all of this as one, we put all of this in one particular prompt. What happens is, you can see in the middle, it will be XYZ marketing proposal, 2 pages, right? So before, it was the first one, I think it gave was 1 page, then it did 3 pages, the next one was also 3 pages. Now this has gone to 2 pages now. It's got the 3 ideas that we wanted to do and the pros and the cons. So now, when it comes to everything that it is that we're looking for, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be so much more tailored to what it is that we need. And by putting this in, it really does make sure that when we do edit it, it's just a lot less time in our end, editing it. And also, we don't have to then keep asking for doing other prompts to then say, oh, can you tweak this? Can you edit this? Can you do this? Because you've pretty much got the majority of what it is that you need first time. So if you put a bit of time, I'll go into the next slide now. This is just a summary, really, of what it is that we've just talked about. But at least you can see it all on one page. So we start with the goal, we add the context, we specify the source, and we set clear expectations. Those are the 4 most important parts of this. Like I said, if we are doing this and we do it every time, it might take a little bit of time to do this, but once you get into the habit of doing it, it just means that it will save you that time in the long run. Right, so especially this is all for one-off things. So if we need it to be something which we need to get something right, it's not something we need to do all the time, because obviously if we're doing goal, context, source, expectation again and again and again for the same thing, then we need to look at another way of doing that, which we'll get into shortly. But this is for one-off stuff. So if we want something to be quite quick, get it done, get it out of the way, put a bit of time into the prompt engineering, this bit here, and then it just means that you'll save that time a little bit later on. So that covers the prompt engineering from I guess just from a daily use perspective. Of course, when we're using other AI tools, not just Copilot, if we're using other AI tools, when it comes to the bits where it says specify the sources, it'll be using the product specifications and requirements found in, and then you would then put in whatever the source is. So maybe it would be a web page, for example, and you could use that in Copilot chat as well. You could put down the web pages so then it can go in and find that information. But like I said, that's only things that are in public web pages, not things that are secure and internal company documents that it can search in with that. But it's the same type of thing with ChatGPT, same type of thing with Claude, all these other ones, similar kind of thing. You would just say found in and then put where that would be, but that would all be public facing stuff for the source. So what if we're tired of writing the same prompts for repeat tasks? So I mentioned already about the this is for one-off things. This is for things that we need to get right. If we're doing it as a one-off and we just want to have something very polished to begin with, that's great. But if we keep doing that, it can get really tiring. Having to do the same thing. I have a personal example that I'll get into it in a bit, but basically there was over late last year, I had lots of people contacting me for proposals for laptops. Loads of people wanting laptops because Windows 10 was ending support, and people were wanting to get to Windows 11 laptops that were, compatible with that. So I was having to do all these quotes, and there's part of those quotes which is an executive summary. And I was doing so many of these quotes that the executive summary, if I was doing that, that would have been a job in itself. So I used, first of all, I started just doing, the prompt engineering to make sure that the language and the way that I was constructing it was accurate. But what eventually happened was I just got so tired of having to do the same thing again and again and again. So that's what leads us into the answer here, which is creating agents within the Copilot chat wizard. So there is a way of being able to not have to do that same prompt engineering again and again and again, and to just build an agent based on what it is that you need. So essentially it's essentially an idea of being able to have a something which already understands the guidelines of that GCSE method, the guidelines of prompt engineering for a specific task. So for example, with me, I wanted to have an executive summary. I didn't want it to sound really robotic. I didn't want it to have loads of particular elements that weren't great. So what I did instead was I thought, okay, I'm going to go to this Copilot chat wizard, and I will show you it in a moment. And then once we've got that, then it means that I can now just go into this certain area which already kind of has most of the things that I need, and then just tell it, can you do an executive summary for this certain laptop for this client? And it will know all the rest of the context, everything else that I need, and it will make it for me. So what I'll do is I'll just press play on this, and you can watch a quick video. As you can, excuse me, as you can see, we've got these different agents here. These are ones that are pre-built agents that that Microsoft already has within the Copilot store. This is what happens when you go through to create agent. Now, this is something which is really for users of Copilot. I think that there is a possibility of doing agents, very basic agents within Copilot chat as well, but it's not the same. It's not to the same level here. First of all, you name it, give it a description of what it is that you're going to do. And you can see this is the one that I did for the order assistant, basically all about making sure that we're doing executive summaries correctly. I've put down to search a website so it can give me the best context, and I've also put on the SharePoint the elements that I need to draw from, to assist me with that. Once you've done it, you can then try it out in this little try it section here. So you can just make sure that everything is as it is, as you want it to be. You click update, and then what that does is I think the first time you have to press save, but then if you're editing it, then you update, and then you just go through to the agent here, and I've put down here, look, please create an executive summary for the following, and I put in what it is. Also, the various different bits that are part of that, the fact that it will require some time to set up, and then look, it just generates this, and it's already pretty much as I need it to be. So I'll probably have to have a little look through it and edit, but yeah, it pretty much does it as I want. It also then says, would you like me to do an email? And part of the prompt that I put into the email, into this thing here, was to just say, okay, just do a very brief email. So then again, I've got like a very brief email template, and of course I won't use that exactly, but it will just give me something to then tweak when I'm sending an email to a client, and it just helps save all of that admin time. And that's really the whole point of Copilot. It's an assistant. It's designed to help us, to help save us time. That doesn't mean it replaces us, but what it does is we can use it as something to help enhance our role and just make sure that it alleviates the parts of the role that we find the most tricky. So we're coming to the end now. These are the key takeaways from the webinar. So the first thing, we need to identify which version of Copilot we're using, because only once we understand that can we really then go, okay, right, how is it that we can use it? What sources can we actually draw from there? And talking about sources, we need to make sure that we're curating a searchable library in SharePoint and OneDrive. So for business owners, SharePoint is something which, of course, is something which is going to benefit the entire company. So if you're putting like sales collateral, catalogs, things like that, it just means that, for example, if people need to quickly find a price for something, they can just ask Copilot. They don't have to go and look through all of those catalogs. They can just literally say, oh, what's the price of this, or what's the lowest I can go to on this and still make the minimum yield, or whatever it would be. And then individuals within the company, of course, we have the OneDrive as well. So yeah, if you've got things that you want to reference but you don't want everyone else seeing, things that are a bit more personal, or things that are your own personal style stuff, then you can make sure that that's all within your OneDrive. And again, your Copilot can find that as and when you need it. Third takeaway for one-off prompts, consider the GCSE method. We just talked about that in depth. I'm not going to go into that bit more. And then also you can find or create personal agents to assist you for repeat tasks. So remember, GCSE method for one-off prompts, when you're trying to get everything as perfect as you need for those one-off ones. But for repeat tasks, consider using the little wizard that's within Copilot already to create those agents. And finally, and I mentioned this already, but Copilot really does work best when it's given clear context and expectations. So don't treat it like a mind reader. Treat it like a colleague. When you're telling a colleague how to do something, or asking a colleague how to do a certain thing, or maybe to complete a task for you, you wouldn't just say, can you just do this? Because that would be ridiculous. We give our colleagues context. We tell them where to find stuff if they need to go and find it. And then when our colleague then comes back to us and says, oh, is this what you need? Even if it's not perfect, it will be a lot better than if we just said, oh yeah, just go and do it. It's the same thing with Copilot, right? So the final step is just to make sure we are treating Copilot as a colleague and not as a mind reader. So that's me done with the webinar now. I don't know if there's any questions or anything from anyone, but I'm going to end this. And if we do have any questions, we've got a few more minutes. So Hayley, have we got any questions that have come up?
Thanks, Sim. No, there's nothing in the chat. I have just dropped in that I'll send the recording and the slides to everybody this afternoon. Unless anybody's got anything else. Nope.
Perfect. Brilliant. Well, thank you everybody for your time. And yeah, I'm sure I'll see you all at some point very soon. Cool. All right, take care all.